Excellent. Okay. Great.
This is not a set. We're outdoors.
Yes. Awesome. Well, it is 3:30, so I would love to get started. I am here with Kevin James, candidate for Los Angeles City Attorney. And before we jump in, kind of hearing about your story and City Attorney and all of that, I would love for people who haven't been joining in these or are new to Rise Together, I'd love to give a little background. So Rise Together was started because the city is in crisis, but it doesn't have to be this way. We know that as Angelenos, we can create lasting and positive change. And a really important part of that is through municipal elections and being involved in local politics. So the purpose of our candidate interview series is to make the 2022 municipal elections just a little bit more accessible for everybody. So with that, I would love to start with my same question that I start with every time, which is, what does the city attorney do, and how does that affect our lives?
It's the most important office in the city for many reasons, and it's not just because that's a self-serving statement for the campaign, but I'll get to that in a second. So quite simply, the city attorney is the lawyer for the Municipal Corporation of Los Angeles. That means that the city attorney's office represents the city of Los Angeles. It defends the city in court, files affirmative litigation cases for the city in court. It also has, and that's in the civil branch, it also has a criminal branch. So the city attorney's office does prosecute misdemeanors that occur inside the city of Los Angeles. The other important roles, there are major policy roles that the city attorney participates in. The city attorney is the office that drafts every city ordinance that the city council passes. The city attorney interprets the charter. The city attorney represents all of the city departments, the city commissioners, also the city council, the mayor. So it's really a very large portfolio. That includes, by the way, the three proprietary departments that have their own budgets, the Department of Water and Power, the Los Angeles Port, and the airport as well. So it's a significant office.
Yes. Wow. That is very helpful. Truly, every time I learn more new things about what the city attorney does. I would love to hear, though, about your background and what your priorities are if you were to get elected.
Great. So Rochelle and I were just talking. I moved here in 1988 to become a lawyer in Los Angeles. I started at Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, so 33 years ago, hard to believe. But I've spent my 2/3 of that career in the private sector. I was at a couple of different private law firms, even here in Century City. I also worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I was a federal prosecutor in the early 90s. And then I take what, it's not really a sabbatical. I actually left the law firm that I'd worked at previously, that I've returned to now, to serve as the president of the Board of Public Works in the city of Los Angeles. I was also the director of the Mayor's Office of Film and Television Production and the chief of legislative affairs for the city of Los Angeles. So that's a bit of my background. One of the things that, you want to ask another question? Go ahead.
Well, I would love to hear about just your priorities coming in.
Okay, you did ask that question.
No.
So my priorities for the office, look, there are a few reasons that I wanted to run for city attorney, without getting into kind of the technical inside City Hall reasons from my years working with the city attorney's office. Quite simply, the city, as city attorney, you really do have a significant impact on making our communities safer and cleaner. The city also needs to return itself to a trusted level with the public. But for the most important issue, I think, in this campaign, which is homelessness, we need a new legal strategy on homelessness and affordable housing both. And the city attorney's office is the most important office when it comes to solving homelessness right now. Here's why. Every issue related to the homelessness crisis right now, as you may know, Rochelle, those issues are being decided in the courts. The LA Alliance case with Judge Carter, the Mitchell case, the Garcia case, the Boise case, all those decisions are decided in the courts. And, of course, as city attorney, you are the charter authorized liaison to the courts. That's one reason. The other thing that's very special about the city attorney's race, and the city attorney's office, is that it really is the only office in the city that has the ability to bring a regional solution to the homelessness crisis, because you can do it through the courts. The mayor can't require another city, our neighboring cities, to participate in the solution. The city council can't require it. The city attorney can, by using the courts, because any resolution we get in the courts will apply equally to everyone in our region.
That is so, again, very helpful. I appreciate you sharing that. I know that a lot of the people in the Rise Together community, and I think just people in Los Angeles, care about a lot of the things that you just touched on, namely homelessness, affordability, specifically around housing, and crime. I would love to hear, obviously you kind of touched on homelessness and that kind of things. How can you impact those issues using the Office of City Attorney?
Okay. Well, and let me just, I don't want to repeat myself in our limited time on homelessness, but the issue about defending lawsuits against the city instead of settling them, that enables, once you get a court ruling, the city of Los Angeles will then have leverage to ensure that all of our neighbors, the other 87 cities in LA County, there's 88 cities in LA County, so LA is about 38%, but there are 87 other cities. We can, through a court decision, require that they too step up and actually participate in building housing, both transitional, temporary shelter, and permanent supportive housing, as well as provide services for addiction, services for mental health and job placement services. We can have other cities participate. As a matter of fact, if you wonder whether other cities participate, just Google Beverly Hills and homeless shelter and tell me what comes up. You're not going to see a homeless shelter in the city of Beverly Hills. You're going to see one in the city of Los Angeles. That's just an example of what we need to see and experience all throughout LA County. We need all of our neighbors to participate. On the issue of crime, as I mentioned, Rochelle, the city of Los Angeles, the city attorney's office specifically, does prosecute misdemeanors in the city. Those are the lower level offenses. But because of that, the city attorney's office is really the best place, the most important place for diversion programs. Because when someone comes into the judicial system through a misdemeanor violation, then we have the opportunity to work with them on a diversion program to help them find a job, to get them some training, and we have some leverage with them to make sure that they complete the process. One of the things I talk about is working with my close association with our labor partners to help people get a union card that are interested in that.
Yeah.
However, we also have to be mindful that it's very important for the city attorney's office to know what type of criminal violations are occurring in our communities. So people have heard that law enforcement, LAPD, environmental enforcement teams from sanitation, law enforcement agencies in the city, some of them may have the understanding that there are some elements of criminal activity that they're not to bring to the city attorney's office. So the LAPD feels like, well, there's nothing to do here. That's not the right approach. We can decide together what cases we're going to charge and file on, but it's really important for the city attorney's office to know what's happening in our communities, because data tells us a lot. We can find out where we have hot spots of criminal activity in a community. We can find out from someone, even if we just want to issue a citation or help them into a diversion program, if someone is repeatedly offending, we need to know that, because then we have a sense of the best way to deal with the problem that we're having in that community. So things that are very important for both law enforcement and for the city attorney's office on the criminal side is data and information, transparency, and collaboration, working with the community. The only way we can have success there, though, is if my office knows and law enforcement shares with us what they're seeing happen on the street. Regarding affordability, affordability of housing, look, I believe that the public sector needs to get back into building housing again. We simply need to, for many reasons. Yeah. But we also need to make it easier for the private sector to build. The financing structure for affordable housing is unbelievable. Now, from the city attorney's perspective, there are some unique things that only the city attorney can do. We can prosecute cases that violate ordinances such as the home sharing ordinance. But to do that, we need our departments that enforce those ordinances, that bring the cases to the city attorney's office, to be adequately funded, to have the resources that they need for that.
Awesome. Thank you. I know we have just a couple minutes left, so I'm going to start with this question. If we have time, I'll go into one more. But I think specifically there's a lot of lack of trust with just the city government as a whole, largely because of indictments and also just because people have voted on things and wanted to see change and haven't seen it.
There's been a culture of corruption in City Hall.
Yes. So I would love to hear how, as city attorney, you can ensure that public officials are being held accountable to the people who voted them in, to the taxpayers, and to the people of Los Angeles.
Thank you, Rochelle, for the question. This is a very important issue, of course. My website is kevinjames4FOR, kevinjames4cityattorney.com. There you will see significant content on policy, as well as numerous ideas for the office. And you will see the task force, the anti-corruption task force that I'm going to spend just a second on. This is a task force that I will create as city attorney. It will be populated by people in the city attorney's office, but also people in the controller's office, people in the mayor's office, but importantly, people in the district attorney's office, people in the attorney general's office, and people in the U.S. attorney's office, as well as I've proposed a couple of leaders from academia, from our institutions, our public institutions, maybe even a private school as well. Because and the reason that you want partnerships with the law enforcement agencies like the district attorney's office and the U.S. attorney's office is because that's where you see the prosecutions occur. And I want everyone in city government to be on notice that we have a task force in the city, and we have daily regular communication with our partners that prosecute at the state level and at the federal level. Now, this is something in 2012 and 2013. One of the things I neglected to mention, Rochelle, is I ran for mayor in that race back then. And you can just Google it, and with the LA Times, it was a September debate, was the first time, September 2012, when I put the issue in the culture of corruption, and they adequately and accurately credit me for doing it, into the discussion of the mayoral campaign. And what I was criticized by the press for talking about this culture of corruption. They thought too much. And I'm not, this is not a celebration of any type, but time did tell, and I was right. Let me tell you, though, why it is important that these indictments and prosecutions are happening. I know it's embarrassing for the city. I get it. I've been a part of City Hall as the president of Public Works, where we have had significant success in our oversight in Public Works. But it is very important for these prosecutions, indictments, investigations to occur, because if they don't occur, the culture is allowed to continue. So while it is painful and embarrassing to go through it, it is a necessity that we go through it, because we have to take the people out of the building that are committing crimes and send a very clear message, more clear than before, that if you are going to do business in the city of Los Angeles or with the city of Los Angeles, and you are going to be a corrupt player, you're going to be discovered, you're going to be investigated, you're going to be charged if necessary, and if there's adequate evidence, and you will be convicted if they are able to.
Thank you. That is it's important that we're holding people accountable, and that they know that they will actually be held accountable if they break the law or do something unethical.
The other thing I think for folks and I feel like there was an element of this, like when I stepped into the president of Public Works role, we let out lots of contracts at the Board of Public Works. But word was out that a former federal prosecutor is in that role. As a matter of fact, we had some city contract bids that I was very concerned about. LA Times wrote about it. This was in 2014. I alerted folks that I knew in law enforcement about what I thought were collusive elements. We found a way to solve the problem internally. We just deny all bids in that instance, and bring light to it, which I talked about it in a public hearing. It was involving some tree trimming contracts at the time. But that carries through in the city attorney's office as well. It is an asset when you have someone who has worked in the U.S. attorney's office, who has been in an oversight role already, stepping into that role as well. Those relationships are very important for what I'll call a deterrent effect.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I think we're basically out of time, and I want to make sure I give you a minute just to say anything else where people can find you, social media, your website. I know you've already named that, but just one more time so people know where to find you, and any last words.
Great, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Rise Together for the work that you are doing, engaging the community on municipal and local elections. It's so important. Secondly, my website is kevinjames4, F-O-R, kevinjames4cityattorney.com. I'm Hey Kevin James at Instagram, and I'm Kevin James at Kevin James LA on Twitter. and easy to find on Facebook as well. And please, when you visit my website, take a moment to do a few things. One, read my policy priorities. The reason that content is significant there is I wanted to be transparent and upfront from day one. Also, read the ideas for the office. There are 37 of them, but number 37 actually is the number of programs in the city attorney's office that I would continue. And always, people want to look at the endorsements page, and I would encourage you to do that because you'll see the wide range of support I have from small businesses, from labor, and from community leaders all across our very diverse city.
Amazing. Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
again for joining us. Thank you to everybody who joined live and folks who are watching after. That we would not be doing this if it wasn't for you. So thank you again for taking the time, and thank you everyone for being on. And we're going to jump off.
Anytime. Thank you.
Great.